Really?
whether or not Jesus was a Jew. Now I'm going to say whether or not Jesus was a Jew. Now I'm going to say Jesus was absolutely not a Jew, and I'm going to give you my reasoning for this. There's been a lot of debate around Christmas about Jesus being a Jew or Jesus being a Palestinian. There was the Pope who swaddled the baby Jesus nativity scene in a keffiyeh. This caused a lot of controversy. People were saying he wasn't a Palestinian, he was a Jew. What are you doing? People were lecturing the Pope about this. But let's have a conversation about whether or not Jesus was a Jew.
Jesus was a Jew from Palestine, you know? Because he didn't live in Jerusalem, right? He didn't live in Judah even. He lived in Samaria. What is it called? Galilee, you know? It's like Galilee of the nations, you know? It's not like he lived among them. So of course he was a Jew. Of course he was racially a Jew, but he didn't really live among the Jewish people as so much as in this kind of mixed population section of the place, you know.
And why this matters. Now, I am not going to go and make the case that he was a Palestinian. I'm not sure if he was or if he wasn't. I haven't really thought a lot about that, whether or not he would qualify as a Palestinian. I will say he was clearly treated like one, considering he was killed. So that was very Palestinian-esque, I would say. But I'm not here to have the conversation.
That was Palestinian-esque? What does that mean? What does that mean? That because he was killed? What, so Jews aren't killed? What is she talking about, man? Anyway, whatever.
Or the debate about whether or not Jesus was a Palestinian. I'm going to focus specifically on whether or not Jesus was a Jew. And this is a conversation.
By the way, you guys are aware, right? The red and the blue. I don't have to like point this out every time, do I? Like this woman is clearly a shill. And I hope you all realize this. Okay, but let's keep going.
Very specific for Christians and some Jews. But this is mostly aimed at the Christian community. So if you are a Muslim, for example, or an atheist.
It's bricks. See the bricks? Like they like to do bricks in the background because it's like they're the Masons, you know? That's why they'll often do the bricks. But it's not like just because somebody has bricks in the background doesn't mean they're Freemasons, right? But when you have bricks, red and blue, you have a giant channel and you're talking about this weird stuff, then yeah, that's generally a sign of being a show.
At this point, this still is a conversation for you, and I'll tell you why it should still matter to you. But it is understandable to me why Jews would claim Jesus is a Jew. It's understandable that they would say he was a Jew and he was a heretic, and that's why other Jews persecuted him for claiming that he was the Messiah, and he wasn't. He was just a heretic, and he was killed for it. He was executed for it. If you're a Muslim, you would say Jesus is a Muslim. I am specifically aiming this at the Christian community who continues to believe that Jesus was a Jew. And I'm also aiming this at the Jewish community who keeps telling the Christian community that Jesus was a Jew. Now, why this matters. There is an entire nation murdering people right now for not being Jews in order to create a Jewish nation. So
that's not true. But I guess, you know what, it's somewhat true in the sense that Israel is like this ethno-state where they're like a Jewish state or something like that, right? But see, it's not right we should be careful when we try to understand that conflict in terms of Jew versus other groups or whatever. They might try to identify it that way. Politically, that's what they're trying to do, right? Because they want to bring in Jews from around the world. They want to bring them into their fight. But it's really just a national fight. It's a national, like it's a colony kind of thing, you know, colonization kind of thing, you know? So we should be careful when people try to use this kind of language, okay?
For not being Jews in order to create a Jewish nation. So the definition of what a Jew is matters, especially when your children are being outcast from their homes and killed for fighting back, all because they're not, all because they're being excluded from being a part of a Jewish nation, a quote unquote Jewish nation. Now, much of the Christian community supports this mass.
Hold on. What's up, Sammy? You afraid of losing some cultural thing? Why? What do you mean? Well, remember that culture is from the world, right? Culture is not from God, but culture is from humans made in God's image. So there's some things that are beautiful in every culture, and there's some things that go against God's ways in every culture as well. So within your culture, you need to look around and kind of use your discernment, pray for wisdom again, and try to figure out what parts of this culture honor God, and what parts of this culture are dishonoring Him, and you reject those parts that are dishonoring. Yeah.
A quote unquote Jewish nation. Now, much of the Christian community supports this massacre, favoring the group that calls themselves Jews over the group that doesn't call themselves Jews. And there's a variety of reasons why Christians support it. There's the end of times prophecy. So you've got a group of Christians out there that will support this beginning of the Jewish nation because they believe in an end of times prophecy that says there would be a great gathering of Israel back into that homeland. And when the gathering of Israel happens back in Jerusalem, the Messiah will return. So you've got a group of Christians who are believing this is what's needed to happen in order for the second coming. But there's also a group of Christians that support this because of what they call Judeo-Christian values, with Jews telling Christians that Jesus was a Jew. And so that's why you should support us, because your Lord and Savior was a Jew. And there's a reason why this narrative has come about. It wasn't always the narrative that was out there. But the first big reason why there was this push after World War II for people to start saying and for it to be part of the more mainstream discourse inside of Christian communities to point out Jesus being a Jew, the biggest first reason was to prevent persecution. This is very understandable. After the Holocaust, a lot of Jews would say, "What are you doing? Jesus was one of us. How could you be against us? How could you do this to us?" And I think that is a really understandable reaction, is to say, why would you kill us? Your God was one of us.
Look, I don't know what I'm supposed to comment when they say they always bring up this thing, that event, the event that shall not be denied, and I'm always wondering what I should say because I don't want to because I know it's a hot button issue. I don't want people to be completely turned off by me saying anything about this. I don't want to but I don't know. The fact that people bring that up, remember we were talking about how replacement theology, the idea that the church, or whatever you want to call it, replacement theology, supersessionism, they call it whatever, right? But the idea that the church is now basically Israel, that the church receives the promises that were meant for Israel. Okay? That idea has always been part of the church's doctrine until, well, it still is, right? Except for only this small group of Christians that are kind of Christian Zionists. They're mostly dispensationalists, right? They're the only ones that don't believe that, right? But now, even among these other groups, like these other normal Protestants and stuff, right? They also kind of feel that the notion of supersessionism or replacement theology is somehow anti-Semitic. And it's all been since the Holocaust, or since that event that shall not be denied, since that event, whatever took place there, since then, now they're saying that that doctrine itself, just believing that doctrine is anti-Semitic, quote unquote, right? And so you get a lot of people that aren't even dispensationalists now that will renounce or denounce replacement theology. But like I say, the church has pretty much always believed that idea since the beginning. All right, it's always been the case. So, and it makes more sense. It's like the only way to understand the Bible, really. All right, so I don't know. Just with that whole issue of that event, it changes a lot of issues in the church.
Say, why would you kill us? Your God was one of us. But that has evolved. And I think the main reason why Jews today would say Jesus was a Jew and try to convince Christians of this is to gain support for the creation of Israel and the horrors that it takes to make it happen. So again, the idea of your God was a Jew, so you should do everything you can to help us because we're the people of your God. And then the average Christian goes, oh, you're right. Jesus was a Jew. I love Jews. So yes, I will do anything to help you out. That is why this matters, because even if right now you don't believe in any of this and you think it's all mythical and it's, and you're just a total atheist, there are a lot of people in the world who do believe this. And they believe this with every fiber of their being. There's no convincing them otherwise. And they are now supporting genocide because their beliefs have been twisted in a way that is not being corrected. And I think it needs to be corrected in order for these people to get on the right path again and not support genocide. Now, some people will say to me, Kim, it doesn't matter. Genocide is bad no matter what. It doesn't matter what people believe.
This is another thing. Like, this is another thing people say. Look, man. I don't know why people bring up this dumb thing. Look, people in Germany, the average person in Germany during the so-called, like, whatever you believe about those events, the Holocaust, right? The average person in Germany during that period was not aware of any kind of program to exterminate the Jews. They were not aware of it. It was not something that was general knowledge in the population or anything like that. Okay? That's why if you look at the Nuremberg trials, right? They brought these people from the village of Nuremberg. They brought them out to the place where they were having the trials. They made them like look at all their weird artifacts that they supposedly took out of the camps and stuff, and like, because the people didn't know that, and of course they like, you think the people of Germany are such monsters that they would just allow that to go on? It's just, that's why it's so ridiculous too. And people think now that, oh, the Germans just allowed that, they just allowed it to go on, they just allowed millions of people to be gassed to death. No, it's ridiculous, it's absurd. Okay, they would never do that. So whatever you think about that event, if you believe that happened, okay, fine. Just stop. If you think that was some public knowledge of the people of Germany, it wasn't. It was not, okay? It's absolutely not the case. And even historians of the Holocaust are not going to try to say that. They don't. So when people say stuff like this, it's just historical illiteracy. It's ignorance. It's just wrong, okay? Anyway, sorry.
But it is. Because again, you're not going to convince people who believe in religion. You're not going to convince them by saying, look, genocide is bad no matter what, and you should just agree with that, and you should just stop supporting it. They're still going to support it if they believe that this is what their God wants them to do. Now, I will say before going...
No, the other thing about this is, like, so this is a simplistic argument that these people make too, right? Like, look, I don't support the state of Israel and what they're doing to Palestinians. I also don't support the Palestinians and their violent so-called revolution or whatever, right? I mean, I certainly don't support Hamas, right? All I'm saying to you is, when people on this side of the debate try to say, oh, it's a genocide, don't support the genocide, right? They're not understanding. It's like the other people on the other side of that, they don't just think, oh, it's a genocide, but it's okay because it's God's people. They don't think that. That's not what they think. They think like, no, they think like it's not a genocide. They think it's like they have the whole other narrative in their head, right? They think it's like, well, the Jews, I mean, Israel, they can't help it. They have to fight because otherwise Hamas is going to keep attacking civilians in their territory. And so they fight, and then Hamas hides their army in like the hospitals and stuff. So that's the story that people on the other side, that's what they have in their head, right? And there's other parts of this story too that people like this won't talk about. For instance, the population of Gaza, despite being subjected to a genocide for so long, is continuing to grow, right? They used to be like less than 1 million, now they're 2 million. So it's not that much of a genocide if they're growing in their population, right? And also, there's other things to this story that don't really add up. So I just want to take a side. But for people who are like this, trying to say that the people on the other side just say, oh, it's okay to do a genocide because it's God said so. That's not what they say. They're not idiots like that either, you know?
We're going into this. I don't believe in any of this anymore. I was raised Christian. I was raised in a Catholic family, also a Buddhist family. So I got kind of both sides of that. But also, then I did convert to Mormonism. People will say Mormons are not Christians. I would say the Christian umbrella, when we talk about Christianity, it includes it includes the various different Christian Protestant sects. It also includes Catholicism, Mormonism, anybody who believes Jesus is the Christ, we're going to put under the umbrella of Christianity. But that also, by the way, the reason why people don't call Catholics Christians, or the reasons why they'd say Mormons are not Christians, is similar to why I'm going to say Jesus was not a Jew. It's important. The language is important. It's important to know who you are supporting and why exactly. And most importantly, what if you're wrong? So if you're a Christian and you're thinking,
dude, this woman's gonna talk yap about this thing for 48 minutes. Are you joking? You see how these women are? See this, well, who even listens? Who wants to listen to this stupid woman? What kind of thing is this, bro? Mormons are not Christians at all, but okay. I know, it's just a cult. It's ridiculous that they even say it's such a thing, you know? But anyway, so she's just gonna yap for 48 minutes. She's like, look, she's not saying anything. She's just yapping, dude. How do people listen to this stuff, man? I'm gonna put
you're
it on
thinking,
double
well, I got to
speed.
support the Jews and the creation of Israel because this is going to bring about the second coming of the Messiah. What if you're wrong on who the Jews are? So you have to have a definition of who they are, which really, you know, the Revelations don't talk about Jews, it talks about Israel, the gathering of Israel. That is all the 12 tribes of Israel, not just the tribe of Judah. That's all 12 of them. So you have to be able to make this definition if you're going to believe in this stuff. And by the way, once again, there is no archaeological evidence of any of these people existing. This is a faith-based thing. So if you are a faith-based person watching right now, 100% this is about faith, and that is okay. But there is no.
Wait, what? What? No, that's just gonna say there's no evidence of these people, no archaeological evidence of any of these people existing. Are you mental? How can this person be on TV talking to millions of people? How can this even exist? How does this person exist? How does this even happen? She just literally tried to say there's no archaeological evidence of the Bible. Listen, let me tell you something. You know, people don't know this. The Bible is actually the most valuable source of archaeological data, you know, or sorry, I should say data for archaeologists to use to find their things that they look for, like their different like things that they when they go and try to find digs, try to find out what's going on in that region. When they study the archaeology of the region, well, the Bible is their number one source. And although they always try to deny the Bible, they always try to say, oh, that's just a biblical myth and all this stuff, right? Again and again, what happens is they find stuff and it proves the Bible true. Again and again and again. They used to try to deny the whole existence of the Hittites, the entire Hittite empire. They just denied it. They said it was a biblical myth until they found it. You know, and that keeps on happening. The Bible is like the number one source for those people, okay?
There is no actual archaeological evidence of any of this, of any of these people. There's no archaeological evidence of Abraham. There's no archaeological evidence of Moses. There's no archaeological evidence.
Archaeological evidence of Abraham and Moses. So that means what? That they didn't exist? That therefore it's just a myth? What kind of stupid nonsense is this? First of all, there's tons of people, there's no archaeological evidence of them. Archaeology, if you didn't know, right, is when they actually go and dig up stuff, like actual artifacts, right? They take it and they study it. That's archaeology, right? It's not like, it's different than, say, history. History is like the text, the written stuff, right? So we have a lot of historical data proving the existence of Moses, Abraham, etc. But people will try to claim that there's no archaeological evidence. That's debatable as well. But let's just take it, because that is the majority opinion among scholars, right? That there's no archaeological evidence of Moses, Abraham, etc. So if you want to accept that view, okay, that doesn't disprove their existence. That just means that there's no evidence of them. It's like they call it the what do they call that? The argument from silence. They try to say, oh, there's no evidence, so therefore that doesn't exist. Well, that's not a logical argument. It's called the argument from silence. It's a fallacy. All right.
Evidence of any of these people. There's no archaeological evidence of Abraham. There's no archaeological evidence of Moses. There's no archaeological evidence of Jews ever being in Egypt. There's no archaeological evidence of any of these people ever existing. Some of you might dispute that.
Yeah, I would dispute that. All right, because this is the majority opinion, but there are dissenting opinions among recognized scholars. All right, so it's not like you have to believe this dumb story just because that's what most of them say. It's just like a lot of the other dumb things that they say. Most of them, right? We've talked about critical thinking on this channel before, so
there's interpretation of some archaeological evidence, but there's really no set in stone, agreed upon archaeological evidence of any of this. This is why faith is important when it comes to faith. But what I'm going to say is that if you are a Christian, it's odd to believe that Jesus was a Jew. By the definition that we understand the word to mean today, it meant something different back then. We're going to go over this. So the idea that Jesus was a Jew didn't come into common public discourse until after World War II.
I'm not sure what you mean by feel like that, brother. Like, what do you mean? You're afraid of losing some cultural thing? I get it. Or you mean like when now that you're a Christian, you might lose like some of your cultural identity? That is kind of part of what it is, right? Because like I say, the cultural identity is not really who you are. You're a new creation in Christ, right? But it doesn't mean you have to just let go of everything from your culture or everything from your family and those people or anything, right? It's just a matter of understanding who you are now. You're a new person in Christ, okay? But we can talk about this some more. Let me know, man. I don't want you to feel bad or anything, but it's all good.
Or two. The first English translations of the Bible did not refer to Jesus as a Jew. They used terms like of the seed of David or other references to Jesus's lineage. But the term Jesus was a Jew didn't come into existence until about the King James Version of the Bible, which is the early 1600s. That's when it was first mentioned, most famously in John.
Look, man. Look, I don't know if that's true. I don't really know, right? I don't read too many of those older English translations of the Bible, like the Geneva and stuff, right? So I don't really know. Maybe that's true. I doubt it, but maybe that's true, right? But the fact is, just by the definition of what a Jew is, clearly he was a Jew. Being from the house of David, being the seed of David means that he's a Jew. Of course, David was from the tribe of Judah. The Jews are the people from that section of the country called Judea, the southern kingdom, right? So he's clearly a Jew. And also you can see in the remember he was talking to the woman at the well, John chapter 4. So he says to her, like, you know not who you worship. We know who we worship because salvation is of the Jews. Yeah? And she calls him a Jew and he doesn't correct her, right? So clearly he's a Jew. Okay, there's no doubt about it. There's absolutely no doubt about it whatsoever. Okay.
John 4, when the woman from Samaria.
Oh, look,
the early 1600s.
Now she's going to talk about it. Let's hear it.
That's when it was first mentioned, most famously in John 4, when the woman from Samaria, where it says this, then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou being a Jew asketh, drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria, for the Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. It was also brought up in John 18:35 when Pilate answered, am I a Jew, thine own nation, and the chief priests have delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done? When Jesus was brought before Pontius Pilate.
Pilate put a sign over him saying, Jesus Christ, King of the Jews. He's the King of the Jews, man. And Pilate admitted it. Put the sign up on his cross, man. Are you joking?
And Pilate is basically saying, why am I here dealing with Jewish things? I'm not the Jew judge. Like, why am I being told I have to deal with this? So that is the references to Jesus being a Jew. But here's the thing.
It's not the only references. There's other references. The fact, anyway, seed of David is clearly indicating that he's a Jew. Seed of David. David is a Jew, the King of the Jews. Jesus is also the King of the Jews. Anyway.
And we're going to go over the common arguments in favor and then my responses to them. But the first step is we have to define what is a Jew, and we have to understand the biblical translations of Jew. So first of all, is being a Jew a religion? And this is just defining what is a Jew is, I think, it's extremely important to the people who are being massacred right now. There's a big group of people saying, we're the Jews, you're not Jews. We're able to kick you off this land. This is our land. God promised it to us, right? So then the question I think everybody should be asking is, well, then what's a Jew and what qualifies somebody as a Jew? Is it a religion? Is it?
Look, man, look, the other thing, you see that kind of simplistic understanding of this conflict, it doesn't help either. It's not as if the majority of the Jewish state uses those kind of arguments for their things. Those things come up in the rhetoric of some of these politicians and stuff because they want to use, because the common people, many of the common people have those kind of views. But for example, when they're talking about international diplomacy and why when they try to justify their state and stuff, they don't talk about that, right? So it's simplistic to try to make this conflict like try to reduce it down to those kind of debates. It's not, that's not what this is about, right? It's much more complex than that, right?
Then the question I think everybody should be asking is, well, then what's a Jew and what qualifies somebody as a Jew? Is it a religion? Is it based on genetic bloodline? Like if you're a direct descendant of Judah, Abraham, like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, which Israel, and then Judah, are you then a Jew? Is it someone born in Judea? Or is it just simply if your mom's a Jew, you're a Jew? So back in biblical times, I think it's important to remember that it wasn't matrilineal. That changed somewhere along the line hundreds of years later, but you're never going to find any matrilineal lineage written in the ancient texts anywhere. It's all patrilineal. It's Abraham begat Isaac, begat Jacob, begat Judah, right? That's how the lineage is always going. It's always male, patrilineal. That's how it is. So today, the identity of Jews amongst Jews themselves can't even be defined. They can't even define what is a Jew. So this is the crux of the issue. How can you say Jesus was a Jew when you can't define what is a Jew, even today? Israel can't even define it. The definition keeps changing and widening. They say, well, it's not explicitly religious because there's a lot of Jews today who are totally secular. They don't believe in religion at all. So then they say, well, because it's more of a culture, it's an ethnicity, but how could it be a culture? It can't possibly be a culture when you've got all these various different cultures. You've got Persian Jews that have completely different culture than Ashkenazi Jews in New York, who have a totally different culture than Ethiopian Jews, right? So they're not even culturally the same. In the culture, the only thing that they would have that is culturally the same would be the religious aspects, which then goes back to, well, then is it a religion? And if it is a religion, then how can
Well, what is it? Well, this is needlessly complicating it, because if you go to Israel, right? Well, how do they measure it? They do it based on if you're part of this racial group, based on your descendants, right? Based on your ancestry, right? So that's how they decide it. That's what it is. That's how they define it in terms of who can enter the country and become a citizen, right? And even Ethiopian Jews, like they kind of had to fight it in court or whatever. But now, okay, they're allowed to into the country or whatever. It's because they showed that they had this, or they kind of showed in their court or whatever that there's supposedly some kind of historical link between their ancestors and Solomon. So that's why Ethiopian Jews are allowed. Okay, so it's not some weird complicated thing for them. They understand what it is. Basically a race. It's a racial thing. Okay.
they would have that is culturally the same would be the religious aspects, which then goes back to, well, then is it a religion? And if it is a religion, then how can all of these non-religious people claim to be Jews if it's actually based on a religion? Right. So then they say, well, just don't even ask these questions. Don't even bring it up. Obviously, a Jew.
No, they don't say that. They don't say that. They say that it's by race. That's what it is. It's a race. That's what it is. That's how you get citizenship in Israel. There's no confusion by them. They have no confusion on this. She's the one confusing the issue. She's the one trying to make this into something that it's not. It is absolutely a racial thing. It's their race. They are a race. Okay, that's what they are. That's how they permit people to become citizens of Israel. Okay, that's what it is.
Who is a Jew? You should just know what a Jew is. That's what we're told all the time. And it's like, wait a minute, you're literally killing all these people because they're not Jews. Don't you think you should tell me what a Jew is? I mean, shouldn't it be?
No, they're not killing them because they're not Jews. Again, this is just dumb. This is what these people try to do. This is what they do. They take the issue and they just confuse everything. And they change it from what it actually is to talking about in these other categories. So people who don't know about it, who rely on people like this to kind of educate them on these issues, right? They'll just never understand it. It's just going to be complete confusion in their head when they try to grasp these complex debates that are going on in the global discourse or whatever, right? So that's what these people exist to do. They exist to confuse the issue, create this kind of confusion and more drama, more conflict. Because when people don't understand the issue, then they can't really solve the problem, right? You know?
Made common knowledge and available to people to understand this so that people know whether or not they can be saved from your bombs. I mean, that would be like a nice thing to know. It's not a race, obviously, because you got Jews in Ethiopia who are black. You've got Jews and Ashkenazi Jews in New York and New Jersey who are totally white. You've got Russian Jews who are also.
No, well, that's again. So now she's trying to say race is entirely about skin color and hair thing or whatever, you know? But no, it's not. Race is about your descent. Race is about who you're descended from. Okay? And so some people, they're descended from certain people, and they might look a little bit different, but they're still part of that people group. Okay? That happens. Like in India, they have these people called the Bombay Jews. You know, Bombay, that's what they used to call that city, Mumbai. They used to call it Bombay. And there's these people there called the Bombay Jews. So they're all over the place, but they're from, like, they call them that, these Indian Jews, you know. But they're Jews, but they look like Indians, you know. And then the Ethiopian Jews, they look like Ethiopians, but they're descended from Solomon, or that's the claim, right? And then apparently the Israeli government has accepted this claim. So then that's why their racial heritage is the same. They might look different. That doesn't make a difference, you know? Like even among the other groups, like there's Ashkenazi Jews, they're from Europe, or they're like Russia, Europe, and then a lot of them live in the States now and other parts of like the Anglosphere, right? Ashkenazi Jews look like white people, right? Then you have this other group called the Sephardim, or like the Ashkenazi is Ashkenazim, right? And then the other group is the Sephardim, the Sephardic Jews. Okay, they lived in like southern Spain and stuff, so they look very like kind of like olive skinned. They look almost like Arabs a lot of the time, not always, but they have light skin too. But whatever, mostly they look like kind of olive skinned people, almost like Arabs. But they're Jews, clearly, right? So it's about like how far back you can trace your ancestry, or so they claim to, or whatever.
Also really white. You've got Persian Jews, you've got Iraqi Jews, and Ashkenazi Jews in New York and New Jersey who are totally white. You've got Russian Jews who are also really white. You've got Persian Jews, you've got Iraqi Jews, right? You've got them all over the place.
So that's part of because the race thing is just a made up thing, you know? Like or like the name races, or the races that she's talking about. There's white. She's trying to say, oh, these look like whites. These ones look like black people, the Ethiopians. These ones look like Arabs, right? So those are racial categories that were not recognized back in those days and all that stuff. And they're kind of made up in the modern era very, very recently, you know? So when she says, oh, they can't be a race because they look like this, some of them look like this, some of them look like that. Well, those racial categories are modern inventions. And race has always been understood by your descent, by your ancestry. So it's not the case that just because they're different, they look different, that they're all some different races.
Place from different races. You've got Asian Jews, so these are not. So it's not a race. It's not a.
Also, by the way, the Indian Jews and the Asian Jews and stuff, they don't get to go to Israel and become citizens. So she's just confused. Once again, like these people just confuse the issue. They don't try to educate you. They try to make you understand things. They try to make you understand things in a wrong way so that you cannot understand it. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like she's not just merely saying the wrong things about stuff. She's literally explaining it in the backward way so you can't understand it, you know? Ridiculous.
Bloodline, because Russian Jews were also really white. You've got Persian Jews, you've got Iraqi Jews, right? You've got them all over the place from different races. You've got Asian Jews, so these are not. So it's not a race. It's not a bloodline because you can convert into it. There's a couple of reasons why it's not a bloodline, but one of them is you can convert into Judaism.
Yeah, but you can't convert into it and just go become a citizen of Israel. I'm pretty sure. I don't know for 100%, but if I just decided to become a Jew, like by converting to that, I don't think they're just gonna let me become a citizen of Israel. I'm pretty sure they won't. I don't really know, but I doubt it.
Judaism, and if you can convert
I think
it,
the way it works is if either your mother or your father is Jewish, provably, right? Then they'll let you become a citizen.
and then suddenly you're a Jew. It's clearly not based on bloodline. Also, it can't be strictly bloodline because it would have to be from Judah. And again, there's no archaeological evidence of these people existing, so there's actually no distinct blood.
Again, this is so utterly dumb. No archaeological evidence of these people existing, like King David. There's definitely evidence of David existing, definitely, and Solomon too. Like they literally have like people writing about them. They have like other people groups, like, you know, around there, like the Babylonians and stuff. They'll have writings about David and stuff. You know what I mean? This is so dumb. This is next level dumb. Okay, I don't know why I'm like, I was listening to review it for somebody.
Bloodline, that trace. But let's just say for those of you who are faith-based, because this is really the people I'm talking to, you would have to do the genetic testing then, and people would have to prove that they are a direct descendant from Judah in order to be called a Jew. Now you might say, well, no, it's just all of the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, then you'd be an Israelite. We'll get into that though, because that actually matters as well. So defining this as of utmost importance, especially.
No, it's not the 12 tribes. They anyway, whatever, man. Nobody knows what happens to those other 10 tribes, right? So the way they assess it is like they have like they don't obviously they can't trace their ancestry all the way back to David, right? But they what they do is they have these communities that were around, in different locations around Europe and also the Mediterranean and stuff. And so those communities have like this strong cultural heritage of being Jews. So those people were just sort of assumed to be okay. Yeah, we'll assume you're Jews. Okay, fine, we'll let you in, and then everyone else, and then so based on that, so they based it on those people's records of ancestry and descent, and so if you're descended from one of those groups, then you're considered a Jew.
especially since people are literally being killed over this. So that's the first thing that I'm going to say is it needs to be defined. The term Jew historically was
Yeah, you
reserved. So
see,
first of
so
all,
you
the
see how she doesn't even like say accurate factual things. Like, thank you very much, by the way, Glory. But see, this foolish woman, what's her name? Kim Iverson. What a joke. She tries to say that older English versions of the Bible, older than the King James, they never said that Jesus was a Jew. Which I immediately was like, what is that? That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, okay. I was just like, okay, well, let's accept that because I don't really know. But here we have Gloria has shown it that they did in fact call him a Jew in the Geneva Bible, which is published 12 years before the King James. So she's factually wrong. Probably, I can't see the Bishop's Bible or other English Bibles like the Tyndale not saying that exact same thing either. So I highly doubt what she's saying on that. So you see, these people they don't even report the facts properly, and like all these other things that she was saying was wrong too. These people are wicked, man. Don't listen to these people, man. Wickedness.
all, the word didn't exist. That's not the word they used. They used Yehudim, which then was translated into Greek, which then was translated into Latin, and then we translated that into.
What does Yehudim mean? Yahudim, Yahudim. See how they say that? That's what they say. The im thing is like the plural, right? So Yehuda is the Jew. Yehudim is Jew plural, Jews. So that's the word for Jew. It's translated to English into Jew. That's what that is. Absolutely ridiculous. He's trying to say, oh, they use that word Yehuda. That doesn't mean Jew. No, that's exactly what it means. Are you mental? What a
Yehudim,
ridiculous.
which then was translated into Greek, which then was
What
served.
you
So
saying?
first of all, the word didn't exist. That's not the word they used. They used Yehudim.
The word didn't exist. The word didn't exist. What is she? Who's she saying the word
All of the
didn't
12
exist?
tribes of Israel. Well, then you'd be an Israelite. We'll get into that though, because that actually matters as well. So defining this is of utmost importance, especially since people are literally being killed over this. So that's the first thing that I'm going to say is it needs to be defined.
No, they're not being killed over it. See, it's not being killed over that word. See, this is the thing, man. This is dumb on so many levels. Like, anyway,
The term Jew historically was reserved. So first of all, the word didn't exist. That's not the word they used. They used Yehudim, which then was translated into Greek, which then was translated into Latin, and then we've translated that into meaning Jew when we put together the Bible or groups of people started to.
no, that's not what happened, man. Yehudim, man. It means Jew. That's what it means. It's just like a normal, just like normally how we just use different words in different languages. Oh my gosh, this woman's trying to say that it just happened. Oh, just randomly, this word just came to be randomly over the years when the Bible came along or something. What a joke! What an absolute ridiculous joke! How can this person sit here and act like a reporter or whatever she is? I know, man. Ridiculous, dude. This is absurd.
Identify as Jews when that is not actually the term that was used. The term that was used was Yehudim, which literally means people of the tribe of Judah. Okay, so that is from the tribe. You are a direct bloodline from Judah, and just the line.
Probably not. Probably not. Probably not. There's the. I don't think they call them that, man. The Yehudim is like later on. We'll look at. Well, actually, you guys want to look at this in the Bible? Glory? Tell me. What do you think? Is this helpful? What I'm doing here, is this going to help your mother-in-law or whoever it was, or I can continue, or we could just check the Bible and come back, or something. You tell me. But I'm thinking we could check the Bible right now quickly and show what this word is. I know exactly. She's insulting our intelligence. Yeah, complete joke. Exactly. Thank you. Okay, let me find this word. All right, let's check the Bible and come back. All right, so in the OT, the word Jew appears first in Esther 2:5. Okay. So Esther, this is like after the Babylonian conquest. Actually, it's after they had returned to Jerusalem, right? But not all the Jews went back, right? So there were still some Jews living in Persia. That's where Esther comes in. And there was a certain Jew, Yehudi, Yehudi. Yeah, so Yehudi, but this is a word like this word, but this only comes into play after the northern kingdom of Israel had been taken away. Okay, so for example, let me just show you that. Or maybe it wasn't actually. Let me just see. At that time, Reza, king of Syria, recovered Eilat to Syria and drove the Jews from Eilat. Oh, you see that? So look. So think about that now. Think about that now, because if you think about what's happening here, this is at the time after the kingdom splits. So there was one kingdom of Israel under Solomon, and then when he died, his son is split up. So Solomon's son ruled the southern kingdom of Judea, all right, and then the northern kingdom was called the northern kingdom of Israel. And it was only then that they started calling them Jews. This is the first time the word Jew or Jews appears in the Bible. And chronologically, this is long before Esther as well. So this appears the northern kingdom is still present, but the southern kingdom is being called Jews. The southern kingdom is not just Judean, they're not just people from the tribe of Judah. It's also people from the tribe of Benjamin, and also other people too. Other people would be there. So it's people from the kingdom of Judea, the southern kingdom. They're just called Jews. And the word is, yes, Yehudi, Yehudim. So she's just wrong in so many levels, you know? It doesn't refer to just people from the tribe of Judah. It refers to anyone from the kingdom of Judea, the southern kingdom, and those people are both people from the tribe of Judah and people from the tribe of Benjamin, and other people too. Like there was a lot of Levites there, and there was other people too. Like Anna was for the tribe of Aser. You know,
the term that was used. The term that was used was Yehudim, which literally means people of the tribe of Judah. Okay, so that is from the tribe. You are a direct bloodline.
So once again, just so everyone's clear, she's trying to say Yehudim, Yehuda means people from the tribe of Judah, but it does not. It means people from the kingdom of Judea, the southern kingdom. So that includes people from the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, and other people like Levites and other people from other tribes as well. Okay.
From Judah and just the line of Judah, forgetting the other 11 tribes of Israel, just the line of Judah, that is what makes you a Yehudim. However,
no, that's false. Once again, completely false, completely false.
After the Babylonians and the fall of the first temple, it then was translated into kind of, I guess I should say that the word then kind of grew and the meaning of the word started to expand to include all the tribes of Israel. So anybody who was an Israelite was kind of brought into the term Yehudim because those from the tribe of Judah were most prominent. They were the most powerful, and they were the leadership, really, in the religious.
No, it's not. Once again, this is so utterly dumb. This is dumb. This has nothing to do with what happened. First of all, they were already called Jews in the time before they were taken away or anything. Before even the northern kingdom was taken away. This is like so before like we're talking like the 8th century BC. They were already being called Jews. Okay, the people from the southern kingdom were already being called Jews at that time. All right, then the northern kingdom gets taken away. So that's the other 10 tribes. And in the southern kingdom, you have Judah, Benjamin, and then some people from other tribes, especially Levites. All right. So, and anyone of those people who were living in Judea would have been referred to as Jews, Yehudim. All right, so she's just wrong again. Of the many things she got wrong so far, ridiculous.
In the Abrahamic monotheism religious movement, and so people from Yehudim because those from the tribe of Judah were most prominent. They were the most powerful, and they were the leadership really in the Abrahamic monotheism religious movement. And so people just kind of were put under the umbrella of Yehudism, even if they came from all these various different tribes. And by the time the Romans came around,
not true, not true. Nothing to do with religious bullying or religious power or anything like that. It's just mostly like a political or like designation, or like it's part of being part of that kingdom, right? That's what made you a Jew.
The Romans kind of called all of them, everybody who believed in Abrahamic monotheism, whether they be from the tribe of Israel or not. They could have been Greek followers of monotheism, Turkish followers. They could be any follower of Abrahamic monotheism. By the time of Jesus, the Romans kind of called anybody and everybody who believed in that Yehudism, or Yehud, the Yehudi. They used a different term.
MIL is concerned that Jesus being a Jew is told by modern Jews to manipulate Christians to support Zionism. She also said she feels like Jesus came for all and not just for one particular race. Well, that's absolutely true. Jesus came for all, not for any particular race. Oh, so she's concerned that Jesus being a Jew is a tool for modern Jews, by modern Jews, to manipulate Christians. But this, I guess we have to do. First of all, I don't know if you feel like I've proven that this woman is completely just deceptive and also just wrong on half the things she's saying. She's just factually wrong. Even if we don't want to say she's deceptive, even if maybe your mother-in-law likes this lady or something, I don't know. But even if you don't want to say that, she's clearly just factually wrong on so many things she said tonight. So many things. All right? But then what you should do, I think I would suggest, is try to show your mother-in-law that it's much more complicated than this foolish woman is trying to paint the picture, right? And you know a lot about it now, the whole dispensationalism thing, and so it's really that, right? It's that false theology that has led so many Christians to become Zionists. It's not the fact that Jesus is a Jew, because that's never been, like, nobody ever thought that there was going to be some third temple or all this stuff. Like, all this stuff, like, no, most Christians don't believe that, So I think your best bet, I would say, man, is to try to just make her understand that it's more complicated than that, Yeah. I mean, it's not just like it's not even whether your mother-in-law agrees or not. It's not a question of that. She's just factually wrong, All right. Send her this. Yeah, okay. Hopefully that will help. I mean, there's just so many things she said wrong here. It's unbelievable. First, remember she was saying that thing about how it came through the King James Bible or whatever? What a joke. What a complete joke. And now she's trying to say, oh, it's some kind of religious thing that was forced on them. What are you talking about? You're just making up stuff. None of that's historical at all. It's ridiculous, Anyway.
They used a Latin term, but that's essentially what it translates into, which we now in modern day translate into Jew. But it means something different in the Bible than it does mean today. So same word, different meaning. It's like saying Indian, right? There's Indians.
It means something different in the Bible than it does today. All right, that's interesting. I guess so. That's somewhat true, because the Jew in the Bible is different, because the Jew in the Bible is actually the person that lives in there, And then the Jew in the modern day is like something else, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, whatever.
Indians from India, but we also call Native Americans Indian, so that kind of gets confusing for people. Or using the term.
You see, she's trying to see how she does that, as if that's similar. That's a similar thing. The fact that they call Native Americans Indians, right? As if that's a similar thing to the Jew thing, it's just ridiculous, dude. But this is how they try to confuse people on these issues, man. Because these are complex issues, and most people don't know about them, right? So that's why They get away with this stuff. That's so wicked. Anyway.
Okay, 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 okay. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 Studying the Bible with Mike and Pat. These other YouTubers are just so trash. Hit the thumbs up if you wanna support. Go follow Mike as he follows the Lord. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 You better watch out, Mike's calling out the shills. If you're not free grace, you need to sit down and chill. We're not hyper grace, you know we keep it real. Eternally secure, you know that we're sealed. We don't back low, we're not workspace heretics. Mike's not in it for the money, trying to get a lick. They out here selling their souls for a couple clicks. Becoming Freemasons so they can't just get rich. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 Shout out to Mike and Pat. Check out his channel, Toronto Bible Study. Subscribe and like.